every Saturday when I do my live Q&A, I pull a couple of my questions from Instagram to go over in case I don't have enough questions in the live chat. But it turns out every single week I have plenty of questions from the live chat and I never get to those Instagram questions. So I thought today you could dive in with me to my DMs and see some of the questions that I get, and I can answer them all for you. So I copied and pasted them and printed them out, except for the ones that looked like things I either couldn't answer or were just like saying hi or trying to promote something. So about a week of messages was about 14 questions that came in. This first one says, I'm from Iran and I'm medical coder. The books I use are ICD-10 for diagnosis and ICD-9-CM Volume 3 for operations. I don't know CPT and HCPCS. I want to participate in online AAPC and get CPC certificate. Is it possible for me? So what I would suggest is if you're from Iran, you have to go to AAPC Global. Go to AAPC Global. You'll need to train in CPT and HCPCS. That's an absolute must. You cannot pass the CPC exam without knowing CPT and HCPCS. So you'll need to get training from them on those sections, prepare for the CPC program, and then sit for the exam, and then you can get that CPC certification. Next question. Hi, I have been thinking about making a career change into medical billing and coding. My local community college is offering it via Ed2Go. Not sure if you're able to answer, but my Ed2Go is Ed2Go a good program to take? The tuition is reasonable and I work full time, so it fits my schedule. I'm just worried that it's not accredited to find work later. Any help would be appreciated. Thank you for your time. So I, for liability purposes, do not make commentary on specific programs, except of course onlinedegree.com, which I have an affiliate agreement with and I know intimately. I've personally not taken the Ed2Go program. I've known people who have taken the Ed2Go program. What I want to say is, a lot of these programs, they really are what you make of them. If you're someone who's not a good self-studier, but you take a self-study program, of course it's not going to work well for you. So while some of these programs aren't as robust as maybe they could be, because there's just there's a lot of information to understand in medical coding. So it's hard to cover every single component of it in a short-term program. So, I'm sure that whatever your community college is offering will be adequate. In regards to the accreditation, what you need to understand is, AAPC and AHIMA have different protocols. Actually, if you want to know more about AHIMA, check out Brian Quee on Medical Coding Geek, because he talks more about the AHIMA side of things, whereas I talk more about the AAPC side of things. For AAPC, there is no real accreditation. Anyone can sit for medical coding certifications through the AAPC. Now, it's preferred that you have some sort of training, but there's no protocol saying that it has to be through this certain program with a certain criteria. What they do say is that for your apprenticeship status removal, for two of their certifications that have apprentice status, the COC and the CPC, in order to remove that apprentice, one of those requirements might be 80 contact hours of medical coding curriculum. So if that Ed2Go program has at least 80 hours of content and they can prove through that on a letterhead through that college that you had that 80 contact hours, it will help you in removing your apprenticeship status for those two coding certifications. If you're going through AHIMA though, there are certain protocols, so I would check the AHIMA website specifically for what those are. This next question that came in, it says, I just had a doubt about coding. Is that the code should we find for each, or it may find from the guidelines? So I would recommend that you read through the instructions for using your ICD-10-CM book. Actually, if you check this video here, I give some great information about how to use ICD-10-CM, the step-by-step of how you locate a code, and you might find that very, very helpful. But when you're looking for codes, sometimes there are combination codes, sometimes there's exclude lists, so it's not as straightforward as looking something up in a dictionary or an encyclopedia. There's a lot of different components that go into finding the correct ICD-10-CM code. Next question is, I am from India. I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry. I'm looking forward to choose medical coding as my profession. Is it okay for me to choose medical coding since I am from non-medical background? What will be my future if I opt this profession? Some are objecting me for this profession. I don't know why. I chose medical coding because of my interest in body anatomy, and of course it looks like a safe career. So if you're interested in a career in medical coding, what I would recommend is go back to the main channel page or just click this link here. I'll also have it below. There's a playlist that I created for anyone who is interested in becoming a medical coder. Now, as someone who has a bachelor's degree in chemistry, that really doesn't prepare you in any way for medical coding. We're comparing apples and oranges here. So that bachelor's degree in chemistry is not going to help you for medical coding. For medical coding, you need to go through an entire different training curriculum. So through the AAPC or through a community college or someone to prepare you for training in medical coding. So that chemistry degree isn't going to tell you about ICD-10-CM, CPT, HCPCS, all the things you need to know for medical coding. It might help you out a little bit with some of maybe the components of anatomy that you have already taken, but you still need to learn medical terminology. You still need to learn all of the different code sets. So you need formal training in that as well in order to become a medical coder. That bachelor's degree in chemistry really isn't going to help you out. Next question. Hello, I found you on YouTube. Can you steer me in the right direction? I'm a product developer that is finishing development on a new product coming out. It's a hygienic application for one of our radiographic machines, disposable, and is in a HCPCS Tier 2. I'm looking for codes to assign for the product. Do you know where I can get help with this? It's not a DME, of course. So this sounds like something that you would need a lot of research in order to figure out what the correct code is. I would have to spend a lot of time looking into that. So currently I'm not providing consultant services, but that would be my suggestion, is that you find a consultant who's familiar with radiology and is able to assist you specifically with finding that correct HCPCS code. Next question says, hi, I found you on YouTube doing research on medical coding. I just started last month. I was very intrigued by you and wondering, will you be willing to answer 15 questions for my Foundations of HIM, Health Information Management and Technology class? I have to interview a medical coder. I loved your personality and all the information you've given out. Either way, great content and looking forward to learning more. So I love working with HIM students. I've helped them out with capstones and different interviews and things that they've had to do for class in the past. Instagram DM is probably not the best way, though, to reach out to me. I would reach out via email, victoria@contempocoding.com. It's kind of a hit or miss if you get me to respond, only because I do have an exorbitant amount of people that are trying to contact me for various things, and I am just naturally a very flighty person. So I may get a message like that, have every intent to respond, but then I have to go pick up my kid from school, or a teacher DMs me, or I have to make dinner, and then it just completely gets lost in the shuffle of everything that's going on with the day. But with everything I have to do with my family and my business, being a one-woman show, it's really hard to toggle volunteer stuff when I have things that I know that if I don't get them done, I won't have an income. So it's not that I'm not willing to help out, but you can imagine when you go into YouTube and type in medical coder and you're the first person that pops up, there's a lot of requests. So the next question is, hi, I saw your channel on YouTube and thought I'd reach out. I've had my CCS for over a year, but haven't had any luck finding a job. Any job that hasn't contacted me doesn't want me when they realize I don't have any hands-on experience. Any ideas? I hope this isn't annoying. I've just run out of ideas. Thanks. I have lots of job search tactics on my video, How to Find a Job in Medical Coding. I also talk with Kyle Johnston, which has some great insight about what employers are looking for. So one of the things that you have to do is just keep at it. Sometimes getting that first medical coding job is hard, and that's not exclusive to medical coding. That's a lot of industries right now. But some of my best tips, just quickly summarized, look for foot in the door jobs. If you go on Indeed.com, search for anything that says ICD-10-CM in it. That way it'll populate all of those jobs that have ICD-10-CM or ICD-10-PCS if you want in those job descriptions that they're looking at for a skill set. Sometimes we get so focused on jobs that the title is only medical coder that we forget that there are lots of other jobs out there that are looking for those coding skill sets, but that job title might not be medical coder. So check on Indeed.com, check codersdirect.com. You can find lots of positions on there as well. There's also Project Extern with the AAPC that you can check. And if you haven't gotten your resume professionally done, you definitely want to do that. I'll leave a link in the description to Project Resume, where they specialize in resumes just for medical coders, so they know what employers are looking for. Next question says, hello, I'm starting school soon and was wondering if you know if a student can get a job with billing in coding while in school. Thank you so much for your video. They're really informative. There's lots of employers that will hire coding students, especially in the billing setting. Sometimes you can get lucky and find an employer that's willing to hire coding students that are already enrolled in a program, but then they will make it contingent on your employment that within 1 year or 2 years you obtain your coding credential. So I would certainly just start looking for jobs and applying and let them know that you are in the process of getting your medical coding certification and you are in formal training. The next question I have says, hi, first of all, love your YouTube and you've helped me so much with my coding learning experience, but I wondered if you had a good place to go ask general questions. I've worked in the medical field for 10 years as a medical assistant and now I'm taking AAPC classes for coding. I'm having a hard time with some of the coding and I feel like my instructor doesn't really care, doesn't respond to my emails with questions. Do you know of any general pages where people can post questions to get with help with coding? And then it kind of goes on with a specific question regarding ICD-10-CM and the guidelines. So I know sometimes it can be tough as a student to get answers to questions, but you have to kind of flip that around and think about it. So if someone is working with 100 different students at once, they could potentially, if each of them ask a question a day, get 100 questions a day. Plus they have to prepare their classes and teach their classes. So sometimes it's very difficult to manage a lot of questions from students. There are thankfully lots of resources that you can utilize in order to ask general coding questions. You can check out the AAPC Facebook group. They also have different Facebook groups available for different specialties or different sections. I know there are different study groups, so if you would check around on Facebook, you might be able to find something. Sometimes you can find things on different social media platforms, different forums as well. And if you're really struggling, what I would do is compile all of your questions and get a tutor. You can find a tutor on tutors.com or wyzant.com, wyzant.com, and they'll be able to help you out and give you specific guidance for those questions that you have. Next question says, if MD documented DM with CKD and patient also has HTN, my understanding is that these conditions should be coded as related even in the absence of provider documentation, explicitly linking the hypertension and the chronic kidney disease. ICD-10-CM assumes a cause and effect relationship between chronic kidney disease and hypertension, as well as chronic kidney disease and diabetes. So if all three conditions are listed, I would code all three. So the ICD-10-CM classification assumes a cause and effect relationship between hypertension and chronic kidney disease, and hypertension and heart disease. There's also an assumed cause and effect relationship between diabetes and chronic kidney disease. Now, the one thing though that you have to consider is that there's also, even though there's a combination code for say diabetic chronic kidney disease, they want to know what that stage is of the chronic kidney disease. So in that case, yeah, you're going to need the code for diabetic chronic kidney disease, hypertension with chronic kidney disease. You're also going to need code for the stage of the chronic kidney disease because that combination code doesn't include that specific stage, so you will need that N18 code. The guideline relating to hypertension is in your Chapter 9 guidelines, and then there is also a guideline in the general ICD-10-CM guidelines about the term with and how anything under that term with in the alphabetic index is assumed to be related. Next question says, hi, I had a question. The reviews you have available for the CPC exam, would that be beneficial for also taking the CCA exam? I am scheduled to take the CCA exam in October and I'm trying to prepare myself as much as possible. I love your YouTube channel, by the way. Well, thank you. So the CPC stuff I have really is specific for the CPC exam. It would be helpful for a lot of the things that you would see in the CCA, but just to give you a little heads up, what it primarily has is all of the components of what's in the AAPC CPC exam. So some of it will cross over, but there's going to be some things that are in the CCA exam that aren't going to be in the CPC exam. So actually, if we look over here on the AAPC website, here's the CPC exam breakdown. So it all has all of the CPT, different series codes, E&M, anesthesia, radiology, lab, and path medicine, medterm anatomy, ICD-10-CM, HCPCS codes, coding guidelines, and then some compliance and regulatory questions. If we look at AHIMA's website for the CCA, there's things in here about classification systems. So questions about inpatient coding guidelines aren't going to be on the CPC exam. So there won't be anything covered for that in my CPC review. Let's see. Reimbursement methodologies. There's not going to be a ton of stuff in the CPC exam about LCDs, NCDs, NCCI edits. DRGs are not going to be in the CPC exam at all. So my review wouldn't have anything in it about DRGs. So there's more concepts in the CCA that are not going to be covered in CPC curriculum. The next question here says, hi there, I have kind of a general question. The reference textbooks that I see a lot of people are using, do you think it's important that I purchase the 2022 version if I start class in the next 3 weeks plus? Or the 2021 version still pretty adequate? And I am still trying to figure out which ones I need to start collecting for my online courses and for hopefully one day working remotely. I happen to love physical books versus my iPad. So what books you need depend on the type of coding that you're doing. If you're doing like a CPC curriculum, you'll need ICD-10-CM, CPT, and HCPCS. If you're doing inpatient coding, you're preparing for an AHEMA credential like the CCA, you're also going to need your ICD-10 PCS book. These code sets have hundreds of changes every single year. With the AAPC credentials on January 1, they will want you to have that calendar year's book so that all the exams change on January 1. It is beneficial then to have that calendar year's books because they'll be most current. They'll have those hundreds of code changes. You can use the prior calendar year's books. It's just not ideal because they won't be reflective of those hundreds of code changes. Typically, ICD-10-CM books come out in September, and then the new CPT books come out in December. So if you're kind of around that time frame, it might be hard to get the 2022 or the next calendar year's books because they're not available till closer to that next calendar year. It makes it kind of difficult for those students that are just starting at the end of the year, but there really isn't a good way to get around that. You kind of, in some cases, have to buy those 2021 books because you're going to be studying, but then test in 2022. So you might have to purchase 2 book sets. And as a medical coder, that is something we have to do. We have to get either new books or new encoder program updates every single year. If you want more information about the costs associated with being a medical coder, I do have a video specifically for that. The next question says, I had gotten my certification of completion of medical coding on my community college where I'm from, Houston, Texas. I'm about to retake my CPC exam, but I feel discouraged because I was daydreaming about being a medical coder and I decided to look up jobs for fun and realized there are not many jobs that want CPCA or CPC unless it's an associate's degree. Any advice for me? No, I don't think most people are looking for an associate's degree. So if you're looking at the job description and it says they prefer an associate's degree, that doesn't mean it's a required. So when you're looking at these job applications, they have preferred requirements, which mean we would like if you have these, and then the actual requirements, like this is the hard and fast requirements. You have to have this for a job. Like you have to have a coding certification, it might say, but it's preferred you have an associate's degree, but not required. For example, here's a job that I just pulled up on Indeed, and if we look at this minimum qualifications, it says you have to have a high school diploma. Some college is preferred, not required. They would like you to have that, but you don't have to if you're the right fit for this team. They say that you have to have your CPC or CCSP or CCS or COC. You have to have at least 1 year directly related experience, and they prefer you have clinical background or auditing experience for this, but again, not required. And this one's a perfect example. So if you look here under the qualifications, there's the minimum. So you have to have these preferred. We would like if you have these, you don't have to. So they minimally require a GED, completion of college level courses in anatomy and medical terminology, basic computer skills, and then the certifications. They would prefer you have an associate's degree. They would prefer you have knowledge of ICD-10 and CPT, and they would prefer that you have 1 year of inpatient and outpatient coding experience. Now, there are some higher up positions, maybe a coder 2 or an auditor, where they might say, hey, we would require you to have an associate's degree or maybe a coding manager job, but not all coding positions are going to require an associate's degree. So I hope you enjoyed the dive into my DMs. You can ask me questions live on Saturdays at 2 p.m., so keep an eye out for the next live. If you have questions on finding a medical coding career, this is the video that you want to check out. I will see you guys in the next video, and until then, just keep on coding on.